That morning, I almost didn't stop for coffee. My bank account had less than $20 left, my phone buzzed with another overdue bill, and I had spent the night wondering how much longer I could pretend everything was okay. I walked into the little neighborhood cafe carrying more disappointment than hope, expecting nothing more than a cheap cup of coffee before another exhausting day. But when the young barista looked into my tired eyes, her cheeks turned pink as she handed me the cup. I smiled politely and thanked her, thinking nothing of it until I reached my truck. Wrapped around the white paper cup were 3 handwritten words that made my heart stop. Beneath a small heart was a phone number and a message that simply read, "I get off at 8. Call me." I stared at the cup for what felt like forever, wondering why a complete stranger would reach out to a man who had almost forgotten what hope felt like. Before we continue, if you believe kindness, second chances, and unexpected moments can change someone's life forever, please take a second to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to so you never miss another heartfelt story that reminds us humanity is still alive. My name is Daniel Brooks, a 36-year-old electrician from Ohio. 2 years earlier, my wife had passed away after a long battle with cancer, leaving me alone to raise our 8-year-old daughter, Sophie. Losing Emily hadn't just broken my heart, it had shattered every plan we had made together. Medical bills consumed our savings, overtime disappeared when construction slowed, and eventually I had to sell almost everything we owned except our small pickup truck and the modest house we were desperately trying to keep. Every morning I dropped Sophie off at school with a smile that hid the fear growing inside me. She thought I was strong because fathers are supposed to be strong, but the truth was I cried alone almost every night after she fell asleep. That little coffee shop became part of my routine because they sold the cheapest coffee in town. The young barista who always greeted customers with a genuine smile was named Claire. She looked about 28, with warm brown eyes that somehow noticed everyone without making anyone uncomfortable. She remembered names, favorite drinks, and always treated every customer like they mattered. I had noticed her kindness before, but I never imagined she had noticed me. When I looked closer at the cup, I wondered if the number had been meant for someone else. Maybe she accidentally handed me the wrong order. Maybe another customer was expecting that message. The thought of embarrassing myself made me shove the cup onto the passenger seat and drive away. All day long I couldn't focus. Every wire I connected, every outlet I repaired, my thoughts drifted back to those handwritten words. They didn't seem like a prank. The handwriting was careful, almost nervous. It wasn't flashy or dramatic. It simply felt sincere. At exactly 8:30 that evening, after Sophie had gone to bed, I finally gathered enough courage to call. Claire answered on the second ring. The first few minutes were awkward. She admitted she had been nervous all day, wondering if I would ever call. She explained that she wasn't trying to flirt with a stranger in the usual sense. For months she had watched me quietly come into the cafe wearing the same worn work boots, always looking exhausted but never failing to smile politely or thank everyone around me. She noticed that every Friday I bought one blueberry muffin, cut it in half, and carried the larger piece away in a napkin. One afternoon she had seen me outside giving that larger half to my daughter while pretending I wasn't hungry. That moment had stayed with her. She told me her own father had raised her alone after her mother left when she was young. She recognized the quiet sacrifices that single parents make because she had lived through them herself. Those words hit me harder than I expected. For the first time in years, someone saw past my smile. Over the following weeks we talked every evening. Sometimes for 15 minutes. Sometimes for 2 hours. Claire wasn't interested in my problems because she wanted to fix them. She simply listened without judgment. She laughed at my terrible jokes, asked about Sophie, and reminded me that surviving difficult seasons wasn't weakness. It was courage. Eventually she met Sophie. I had been terrified my daughter wouldn't accept anyone new in our lives, but children have a remarkable way of recognizing genuine kindness. Claire didn't try to replace Emily. She never forced affection or rushed anything. She simply showed up. She helped Sophie with homework, cheered at her soccer games, and somehow convinced her to enjoy reading again by turning every bedtime story into an adventure. Life slowly began to feel lighter. Then everything nearly fell apart. The company I worked for announced massive layoffs after losing several contracts. My name was on the list. Just like that, I had no income. The mortgage company gave me 30 days before foreclosure proceedings would begin. I tried finding work everywhere, but dozens of skilled tradesmen were applying for the same positions. Every rejection chipped away at the confidence Claire had worked so hard to rebuild. One evening I told her maybe this was a sign that happiness simply wasn't meant for people like me. She didn't argue. Instead, she quietly asked me one question. What had I always wanted to do before life got in the way? The answer surprised even me. I admitted I had dreamed of opening a small electrical repair business where honest work mattered more than rushing through jobs. A week later Claire arrived carrying a folder. Inside were business registration forms, a simple website she had built herself, and a list of local community organizations willing to recommend trustworthy electricians. She had spent every evening researching instead of watching television because she believed in me long before I believed in myself. I almost cried. She hadn't handed me money. She had handed me a future. The first month was painfully slow. Some days the phone never rang. Other days I earned barely enough to buy groceries. But every satisfied customer told another neighbor, who told another friend. Word spread that there was finally an electrician who showed up on time, charged fair prices, and treated elderly homeowners with respect. Within a year, I hired my first employee. Within 2 years, we had 3 service trucks on the road. More importantly, Sophie no longer worried about losing our home. One rainy Saturday afternoon I returned to the same coffee shop where everything had started. Claire was still working weekends because she genuinely loved the people there, even though she no longer needed the paycheck. This time I handed her a coffee cup. Written on it were the words, "Thank you for seeing them and everyone else overlooked." Tears filled her eyes before she smiled the same beautiful smile I had first seen years earlier. Not long afterward, we stood in a small church surrounded by family, friends, loyal customers, and neighbors whose lives had crossed ours because of one unexpected act of kindness. Sophie proudly carried flowers down the aisle before wrapping Claire in the biggest hug anyone had ever seen. As I looked around the room, I realized something that changed me forever. The greatest miracles rarely arrive with fireworks or grand speeches. Sometimes they arrive on an ordinary paper coffee cup, written in nervous handwriting by someone brave enough to believe another human being deserves a second chance. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please like this video, share it with someone who may be losing hope, subscribe to Dot, and leave a comment because your words might encourage another person who needs them today. Special request, before this story ends, please comment with the words, "Kindness changes lives," if you believe one small act of compassion can completely transform someone's future. Years later, I still keep that faded coffee cup safely tucked inside a memory box in our home. The ink has faded, the paper has grown soft with time, and the tiny heart she drew is barely visible anymore. But every time I look at it, I remember that the most extraordinary chapters of our lives often begin with the smallest gestures. One smile. One handwritten note. One person willing to care. And because Claire chose kindness on an ordinary morning when I felt invisible, my daughter grew up with hope, I found love again without forgetting the love I had lost, and our family discovered that second chances are real for those who are willing to give them, and brave enough to accept them.